The morning sun barely peeked through the gray clouds as Bus 27 made its usual rounds through the quiet neighborhood of Pine Valley. The yellow school bus hummed along the streets, stopping at designated corners where children waited with their colorful backpacks and sleepy expressions. Behind the wheel sat Robert, a bus driver who had been transporting children safely to school for over 15 years. Robert wasn't just any bus driver. He knew each child by name, remembered their birthdays, and could tell when something wasn't right. His bushy gray mustache and kind eyes made him appear grandfatherly, and the children trusted him. Parents waved at him with appreciation each morning, knowing their little ones were in good hands. At precisely 7:35 a.m., the bus pulled up to the corner of Maple and Oak Streets. Robert spotted a familiar silver sedan parked at the curb. Inside sat Mr. Chen and his daughter Lily, a third grader with straight black hair usually decorated with colorful clips. Robert had always admired how punctual they were, never too early, never late. As the bus doors swung open with a mechanical hiss, Robert called out his usual cheerful greeting. "Good morning. Happy Thursday." Mr. Chen stepped out of the car, first opening the back door for Lily. Robert noticed something different today. Normally, Lily would hop out excitedly, give her father a quick hug, and bound up the steps with stories about what she hoped to learn or the games she planned to play at recess. Today was different. Lily stepped out slowly, her head down, clutching a plain blue backpack to her chest. The colorful butterfly clips that usually adorned her hair were missing, and her ponytail looked hastily done. "Come on, we don't want to hold up the bus, Mr. Chen said, his voice carrying an edge that made Robert sit up straighter. Lily nodded without looking at her father. No hug today, no excited wave. She simply trudged toward the bus steps. Robert's eyes met Mr. Chen's for a brief moment. The man's smile seemed forced, not reaching his eyes. "Have a good day," Mr. Chen called out, already turning back toward his car. "Good morning, Lily," Robert said gently as the girl climbed the steps. "How are you today?" Lily just nodded, avoiding eye contact. She hurried past him to find a seat, choosing one near the front rather than her usual spot in the middle where she sat with her friends. Robert watched her in the large rearview mirror as he closed the door and pulled away from the curb. Something wasn't right. In his 15 years of driving children to school, he had developed what his wife called a sixth sense about these things. The next day was the same, and the day after that. Each morning, Lily grew quieter, her movements more hesitant. Robert noticed that Mr. Chen seemed increasingly impatient during drop-offs, checking his watch repeatedly and barely waiting for Lily to reach the bus steps before driving away. By the following week, Robert's concern had deepened. Lily's appearance had changed. Her clothes, once neat and colorful, now looked rumpled. The blue backpack she clutched so tightly was different from her usual purple one with rainbow zippers. When other children tried to sit beside her, she would turn toward the window or claim she was saving the seat for someone else. Robert mentioned his concerns to his wife that evening over dinner. "Maybe I'm overthinking it," he said, pushing his mashed potatoes around. "Kids go through phases, right? But something just feels off." His wife reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "Your instincts are usually right, Robert. You've been doing this job long enough to know when something's not normal." The next morning, Robert paid extra attention. As the bus approached the Chen stop, he noticed Lily and her father seemed to be having an intense conversation in the car. Lily was shaking her head, and Mr. Chen's hands gripped the steering wheel tightly. When the bus pulled up, Mr. Chen quickly composed himself and got out to open Lily's door. "Remember what we talked about?" Robert overheard Mr. Chen say in a low voice as Lily stepped out. "Not a word to anyone. It's our family business." Lily nodded, her small shoulders slumped. As she climbed onto the bus, Robert noticed her eyes were red and puffy. "Morning, Lily," he said warmly. "Everything okay today?" For the first time in days, Lily looked directly at him. Her bottom lip trembled slightly before she pressed her lips together and nodded. She clutched her backpack even tighter as she made her way to her seat. Throughout the drive, Robert kept glancing at Lily in his mirror. She sat alone, staring out the window, occasionally wiping her eyes with her sleeve. When they arrived at school, Robert made a decision. He would speak to Mrs. Patterson, the school counselor, about his concerns. But before he could act on this thought, something unexpected happened. As the children filed off the bus, Lily suddenly tripped on the steps. Her backpack flew from her grasp, hitting the ground with enough force that the zipper burst open. Books, pencils, and papers scattered across the sidewalk. "Oh no," Lily cried, out the most emotion Robert had heard from her in weeks. "It's okay, honey," Robert said, setting the brake and standing up to help. "We'll get it all picked up." As Robert knelt to help gather her things, he noticed something unusual among the scattered school supplies. There were several sealed envelopes, addressed in a child's handwriting to Mom with different addresses crossed out. Next to them lay a small notebook that had fallen open, revealing a list of phone numbers labeled Grandma, Aunt Judy, and Mom's friend. Most concerning of all was a small folded paper that had partially opened, revealing what looked like a hand-drawn map with routes highlighted and circled locations marked safe places. Lily lunged forward, quickly scooping up the envelopes and paper, stuffing them deep into her backpack. Her hands were shaking. "Please don't tell my dad you saw these," she whispered, her voice so soft Robert barely heard it. Robert felt his heart sink. In that moment, he knew his concerns hadn't been unfounded. Something was seriously wrong in Lily's life. "Lily," he said gently, making sure none of the other children could hear. "Is everything okay at home? You know you can talk to me or any of your teachers if you need help." Lily's eyes filled with tears. She looked around nervously, as if expecting her father to appear. "Dad says we have to leave soon. He says Mom doesn't want us anymore, but I don't believe him. He won't let me call her. I've been trying to write letters, but he checks the mail." Robert felt a chill run down his spine. This sounded like a potential custody issue, possibly even an abduction plan. He needed to act quickly but carefully. "Thank you for telling me," he said, keeping his voice calm despite the alarm bells ringing in his head. "That sounds really hard. Would it be okay if I talked to Mrs. Patterson about this? She might be able to help." Lily hesitated, then gave a small, sigh. "Dad said we're leaving this weekend," she whispered. "I don't want to go. I miss my mom." Robert helped Lily gather the rest of her things. As she walked toward the school building, her small shoulders seemed to carry the weight of adult problems no child should bear. Robert watched her go, then reached for the bus radio. This situation couldn't wait. "Dispatch," he said firmly. "I need to speak with Principal Johnson immediately. It's urgent." As he waited for a response, Robert kept his eyes on Lily until she safely entered the school building. In 15 years of driving a school bus, he had learned that sometimes the most important part of his job wasn't getting children to school safely. It was noticing when something wasn't right and having the courage to speak up. The day after Lily's backpack spilled open, Robert arrived at his bus earlier than usual. He couldn't stop thinking about the little girl with the sad eyes and the secret letters. After his conversation with Principal Johnson yesterday, things had been set in motion, but the wheels of the system turned slowly. Too slowly, perhaps, for a child who believed she was being taken away this weekend. As he checked his mirrors and adjusted his seat, Robert thought about the principal's words. "We'll look into it, but we need to be careful. Family matters are complicated." Robert understood the need for caution, but the fear in Lily's eyes haunted him. He had his own daughter, now grown with children of her own. The thought of any child feeling unsafe made his stomach knot. The morning route began, as usual. Robert greeted each child with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. His mind was elsewhere, counting down the stops until Maple and Oak. When he pulled up to the Chen stop, Robert's hands tightened on the steering wheel. The silver sedan was parked in its usual spot, but something was different. Mr. Chen was standing outside the car, talking on his phone, gesturing sharply with his free hand. Lily sat in the back seat, her face pressed against the window. Robert opened the bus doors and waited. Mr. Chen seemed to be arguing with someone. His voice carried across the morning air, though Robert couldn't make out the words. Finally, Mr. Chen ended the call with an angry tap on his phone screen and yanked open the car door. Time for school, he said to Lily, his voice clipped. He barely looked at her as she climbed out, clutching that same blue backpack to her chest. Robert watched carefully as Lily approached the bus. Her steps were slow, almost reluctant. When she reached the stairs, Robert leaned down slightly. "Morning, Lily," he said gently. "Nice day, isn't it?" Lily glanced up briefly, then back at her father, who was watching from beside the car. "Yes," she whispered, the word barely audible. As she passed by, Robert noticed something he hadn't seen before. A small bruise near her wrist, partially hidden by her sleeve. His heart sank. He'd been trained on recognizing signs of potential abuse, and while he knew children often got bruises from playing, this one, combined with everything else, raised his concern to a new level. Mr. Chen raised his hand in a casual wave before getting back into his car. Robert returned the gesture, forcing himself to appear normal while making a mental note of everything he was observing. Throughout the drive, Robert kept glancing at Lily in his mirror. Unlike yesterday, she wasn't crying, but she seemed withdrawn, almost absent. When her friend Tina tried to sit beside her, Lily simply shook her head and turned toward the window. "Is something wrong with Lily?" Tina asked Robert as she got off the bus at school. "She doesn't want to play anymore." "I think she might not be feeling well," Robert said carefully. "Sometimes people need some quiet time when they don't feel good." After dropping off all the children, Robert didn't immediately head back to the bus depot for his break as usual. Instead, he parked in the school lot and headed straight to the counselor's office. Mrs. Walker, the school counselor, was just setting up for the day when Robert knocked on her open door. "Robert, is everything okay?" she asked, gesturing for him to come in. "I'm worried about one of my passengers," Robert said, settling into a chair that felt too small for his frame. "Lily Chen, 3rd grade. I spoke with Principal Johnson yesterday, but there's more." He described what he'd seen that morning, the argument on the phone, Lily's reluctance, and the bruise on her wrist. Mrs. Walker listened attentively, taking notes. "Principal Johnson mentioned your concerns from yesterday," she said when he finished. "We've placed a call to family services, but these things take time. They need to assess the situation." "She told me they're leaving this weekend," Robert said, leaning forward. "What if there isn't time?" Mrs. Walker sighed, removing her glasses. "I understand your concern, Robert. Truly I do. But we have to follow protocol. Making unfounded accusations can also cause harm." "This isn't unfounded," Robert insisted, his voice rising slightly before he caught himself. "Sorry, I've been driving kids to school for 15 years. I know when something isn't right." Mrs. Walker nodded. "I believe you, and we're taking this seriously. I'll call family services again right now, mention the new concerns. In the meantime, I'll speak with Lily today." "Thank you," Robert said, feeling slightly reassured. "I just can't shake the feeling that we're running out of time." Throughout the day, Robert found himself checking the clock repeatedly. During his afternoon routes, he kept thinking about Lily, wondering if Mrs. Walker had spoken with her yet, if any progress had been made. The afternoon pickup arrived all too quickly, as the children filed onto the bus at the end of the school day. Robert searched for Lily among them. When she finally appeared, she looked different somehow. Her posture a little straighter, her eyes a little clearer. She paused beside his seat. "Mrs. Walker talked to me today," she said quietly. "She said it's okay to tell when you're scared." Robert felt a surge of relief. "She's right, Lily. It is okay." Lily nodded and made her way to her seat. Robert watched her in the mirror as the bus filled with chattering children. For the first time in weeks, Lily didn't sit alone. She allowed Tina to sit beside her, and though she wasn't talking much, she wasn't pushing her friend away either. When they reached Lily's stop, Robert felt his chest tighten. Mr. Chen was waiting by the curb, and he didn't look happy. As Lily gathered her things, Robert noticed her hands were trembling. "Remember what Mrs. Walker said," he told her softly as she passed his seat. "It's okay to tell when you're scared." Lily nodded once before descending the steps. Robert watched as she approached her father. Mr. Chen's smile looked forced as he took Lily's backpack from her, unzipping it right there on the sidewalk. "What's this?" Robert heard him say, pulling out a colorful pamphlet. Even from where he sat, Robert recognized it as one of Mrs. Walker's resources about children's rights and safety. Lily didn't answer. Mr. Chen stuffed the pamphlet back into the bag and zipped it forcefully. He took Lily's hand, gripping it more tightly than necessary, Robert thought, and led her to the car. As Robert pulled away from the curb, a cold feeling settled in his stomach. Something told him the situation had just escalated. He reached for his radio. "Dispatch, this is Bus 27, he said. "I need to speak with Mrs. Walker or Principal Johnson as soon as I complete my route. It's about Lily Chen." The next morning was Friday, the last school day before the weekend when Lily had said they were supposed to leave. Robert arrived at the Chen's stop with a knot of anxiety in his chest. The silver sedan wasn't there. He waited 5 minutes beyond the scheduled time, something he rarely did. Still no sign of them. Just as he was about to close the doors and move on, a police cruiser pulled up alongside the bus. The officer rolled down his window. "Are you Robert Davis, the driver for Bus 27? The officer asked. Robert nodded, his mouth suddenly dry. "Is this about Lily Chen?" The officer's expression was grim. "Could you pull over so we can talk for a moment?" Robert secured the bus and stepped outside, instructing the children to remain seated. The officer led him a few steps away. Mr. Chen attempted to withdraw Lily from school yesterday afternoon and was seen packing their car late last night. The officer explained in a low voice. "A neighbor called it in after hearing an altercation. When we arrived this morning with family services, they were gone." Robert felt his heart sink. "Gone? But what about Lily? Is she okay?" "We've put out an alert," the officer assured him. "Thanks to your report and the counselor's intervention, we have enough concern to act quickly. The mother has been notified. Apparently there's a custody arrangement Mr. Chen was violating." Robert ran a hand over his face. "I knew something wasn't right. I just knew it." "Your attention may have made all the difference," the officer said. "We've got roadblocks set up. The school provided those letters you mentioned. They had addresses. We're checking them all." As Robert climbed back onto his bus, he felt the weight of the situation pressing down on him. He had done everything right, noticed the signs, reported his concerns, followed up, and yet Lily was still gone. Had he missed something? Should he have done more sooner? The children on the bus were whispering, curious about the police officer. Robert put on a reassuring smile he didn't feel. "Everything's fine," he told them, just helping the officer with some information. As he continued his route, Robert couldn't stop thinking about Lily, about her sad eyes and her secret letters, about the fear in her voice when she whispered about leaving. He hoped with everything in him that it wasn't too late, that somewhere out there a silver sedan was being stopped before it could cross state lines, before a little girl could disappear from the life she knew. Robert's bus felt emptier without Lily on it, the space where she usually sat a reminder of how quickly a child's life could change, and how important it was to notice, to listen, and to speak up when something didn't seem right. The weekend passed like torture for Robert. Every time his phone rang, he jumped, hoping for news about Lily. His wife tried to distract him with household projects and visits from their grandchildren, but his mind kept returning to the little girl with the secret letters. By Monday morning, Robert felt exhausted. He'd barely slept, his dreams filled with images of frightened children and speeding cars crossing state lines. As he started his bus for the morning route, he wondered if he'd ever know what happened to Lily. The route felt wrong without the stop at Maple and Oak. Robert found himself slowing down as he approached the corner, even though he knew the silver sedan wouldn't be there. The police had put out an alert, but so far there had been no updates that Robert was aware of. When he arrived at the school, Robert was surprised to see Principal Johnson waiting in the parking lot. The tall man with salt and pepper hair waved him over after the children had filed off the bus. "Robert, got a minute?" the principal asked, climbing aboard. "Any news?" Robert asked immediately, not bothering with pleasantries. Principal Johnson's expression was unreadable. Family Services called this morning. They asked if you could stop by the station after your morning routes. Robert's heart pounded. Did they find her? Is she okay? They didn't give me details, the principal said, placing a hand on Robert's shoulder. But they specifically asked for you. The rest of the morning route passed in a blur. Robert went through the motions, greeting children, making stops, all while his mind raced with possibilities. Why would Family Services want to speak with him? Had they found Lily? Was she hurt? Or worse, had Mr. Chen managed to disappear with her completely? As soon as he completed his route, Robert headed straight to the address Principal Johnson had given him. The Family Services office was located in a brick building downtown, sandwiched between a dentist's office and a small cafe. Inside, a receptionist directed him to a conference room where two people were waiting. A woman in a navy suit who introduced herself as Ms. Rivera from Family Services, and Officer Turner, whom Robert recognized from Friday morning. Thank you for coming, Mr. Davis, Ms. Rivera said, gesturing for him to sit. We wanted to update you personally on the Chen situation, given your instrumental role. You found them? Robert asked, perching on the edge of his chair. Officer Turner nodded. Saturday night, at a motel just outside of Riverside, about 2 hours from the state line. Mr. Chen had changed cars, left the silver sedan in a shopping mall parking lot, and switched to a rental. But thanks to those addresses in Lily's letters, we had some idea where he might be heading. Robert let out a long breath. And Lily? Is she all right? Ms. Rivera's expression softened. Physically, yes. She's shaken up, understandably, but she wasn't harmed. She's with her mother now. Her mother? Robert repeated, confused. But I thought... Mr. Chen had been telling Lily that her mother abandoned them, that she didn't want to see Lily anymore, Ms. Rivera explained. The truth is quite different. Mrs. Chen had primary custody after their divorce 6 months ago. Mr. Chen had visitation rights, but he was supposed to return Lily 3 weeks ago and disappeared instead. Robert's mind flashed back to when he first noticed the changes in Lily's behavior. 3 weeks ago. It lined up perfectly. So all this time her mother was looking for her? Officer Turner nodded. Mrs. Chen had filed reports, but Mr. Chen kept moving around, staying with different friends, making it hard to locate them. He'd been planning to take Lily to his family across state lines, where he believed the custody arrangement wouldn't be enforced. The letters, Robert said, understanding, dawning. Lily was trying to reach her mother all this time. Exactly, Ms. Rivera confirmed. And that's where you come in. When Lily's backpack spilled and you saw those letters, when you reported your concerns to the school, you set in motion the series of events that helped us find her before Mr. Chen could take her even further away. Robert felt a lump forming in his throat. I just did what anyone would do. Officer Turner shook his head. Not everyone notices the signs, Mr. Davis. Not everyone takes action. The sad truth is, many people see concerning things and convince themselves it's none of their business. They talked for a while longer, with Ms. Rivera explaining the legal process that would follow and the support services available for Lily. As Robert prepared to leave, she handed him an envelope. Lily asked me to give you this, she said. Her mother said it was the first thing she wanted to do when they were reunited. Write you a thank you note. Robert's hands trembled slightly as he accepted the envelope. He didn't open it immediately, saving it for a private moment. Back in his bus, parked in the empty lot behind the Family Services building, Robert carefully opened the envelope. Inside was a card covered in colorful crayon drawings of a yellow school bus and rainbow butterflies. The handwriting was unmistakably a child's, large and careful. Dear Mr. Robert, it read. Thank you for helping me find my mom. I was scared, but you saw me. I have my purple backpack again and my butterfly clips. Mom says you are a hero. I think so too. Your friend, Lily. Beneath the note was a small school photo of Lily, smiling brightly, her hair adorned with the colorful butterfly clips he remembered from before everything changed. Robert wiped his eyes with the back of his hand and carefully tucked the card back into its envelope. Some people might call him a hero, but he didn't see it that way. He was just a bus driver who paid attention, who trusted his instincts when something didn't feel right. As he started the engine and prepared for his afternoon route, Robert thought about all the children who would soon file onto his bus, their laughter, their worries, their stories. He couldn't solve all their problems or protect them from everything, but he could pay attention. He could notice when something changed. He could be a safe adult in a world that wasn't always kind to little ones. The next day, Robert adjusted his route slightly, adding a new stop 3 neighborhoods over. When he pulled up to the curb, a woman with kind eyes and a striking resemblance to Lily stood waiting, holding the hand of a little girl with butterfly clips in her hair and a purple backpack with rainbow zippers. "Good morning," Robert called, as the doors swung open. "Happy Wednesday." Lily bounded up the steps, her face breaking into a wide smile that Robert hadn't seen in weeks. "Good morning, Mr. Robert. This is my mom." Mrs. Chen stepped forward. "I wanted to thank you in person," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "What you did for my daughter, I'll never be able to repay you." Robert shook his head. "Seeing Lily happy is all the thanks I need." As Lily found her seat, back in the middle of the bus where she used to sit with her friends, Robert exchanged a meaningful look with Mrs. Chen. No words were needed. They both understood the bullet they'd dodged, the future they'd changed with small actions that added up to something enormous. On the drive to school, Robert kept glancing in his rearview mirror. Lily was chatting animatedly with Tina, showing off her butterfly clips, her face alight with the carefree joy that every child deserved. The knot that had lived in Robert's stomach for weeks had finally dissolved. At one point, Lily looked up and caught his eye in the mirror. She gave him a small wave and a smile that seemed to say more than words ever could. Robert smiled back, his heart full. Some people might not think much of driving a school bus, might see it as just a job. But Robert knew better. Every day he carried the most precious cargo in the world. Not just their bodies from home to school and back, but sometimes their secrets, their fears, their hopes. Being worthy of that trust was no small thing. As the bus turned into the school driveway, filled with the morning sounds of children's voices, Robert thought about the card tucked safely in his pocket, the one with the colorful drawings and the words that meant everything. "You saw me." In a world where it was too easy to look away, to mind your own business, to convince yourself that your intuition was wrong, Robert had chosen to see. And that, he realized, might be the most important thing any of us can do for one another. 2 weeks had passed since Lily had been reunited with her mother. Life at Pine Valley Elementary was slowly returning to normal, but for Robert, things would never be quite the same. His experience with Lily had awakened something in him, a heightened awareness of the children in his care and the silent struggle some of them might be facing. On a crisp Tuesday morning, Robert was enjoying his coffee in the school parking lot during his break when a tap on his bus door startled him. It was Principal Johnson, accompanied by a woman Robert didn't recognize. Her suit and the badge clipped to her belt suggested she was some kind of official. "Morning, Robert," Principal Johnson said as Robert opened the door. "This is Detective Wilson from the County Sheriff's Department. She'd like to speak with you if you have a moment." Robert's stomach tightened. Had something else happened with Lily and her father? "Of course," he said, setting aside his coffee. "Come on up." Detective Wilson had a firm handshake and keen eyes that seemed to notice everything. She settled into one of the front seats while Principal Johnson excused himself, saying he had a meeting to attend. "Mr. Davis," the detective began, "I'm investigating the Chen case. I understand you played a key role in identifying that something was wrong." Robert shrugged modestly. "I just noticed changes in Lily's behavior and reported my concerns. The school and family services did the real work." Detective Wilson smiled. "Don't underestimate your contribution. In cases like these, early identification often makes all the difference." She pulled out a small notebook. "I was hoping you could walk me through exactly what you observed in the weeks leading up to Mr. Chen's attempted flight." For the next hour, Robert recounted everything he could remember: the changes in Lily's appearance and behavior, the interactions with her father, the contents of her backpack that had spilled that fateful day. Detective Wilson took detailed notes, occasionally asking questions that helped Robert recall additional details he hadn't thought significant at the time. "The envelopes," the detective said, tapping her pen against her notebook. "You mentioned they had different addresses crossed out. Do you remember any of those addresses?" Robert closed his eyes, trying to picture the envelopes. "I only got a quick glimpse, but I remember thinking they looked like they were in different states. One had Arizona in the address line, I'm pretty sure, and another mentioned Grandma's house in the corner." Detective Wilson nodded. "That matches what we found in Mr. Chen's car, a GPS with several routes mapped out, primarily to Arizona and Nevada where he has family connections." "Has he been charged?" Robert asked. "Mr. Chen is facing several charges, including custodial interference and violation of court orders," the detective confirmed. "But my investigation goes beyond just this one case." She closed her notebook and looked at Robert with renewed interest. "What you did, noticing the subtle signs, following your instincts, reporting your concerns promptly, potentially saved Lily from being taken across state lines. Do you realize how rare that kind of awareness is?" Robert hadn't thought of it that way. He'd simply done what felt right. "The sad reality," Detective Wilson continued, "is that many custody abductions aren't detected until it's too late. The first few hours are critical, but they're often wasted because the warning signs are missed." She leaned forward slightly. "That's why I'm here today. The department is developing a training program for people who work with children, teachers, daycare providers, bus drivers, coaches, anyone who might be in a position to notice these warning signs. We'd like your help." "My help?" Robert repeated, surprised. "I'm just a bus driver." Detective Wilson shook her head firmly. "You're exactly the kind of person we need. You demonstrated natural awareness and good judgment. You trusted your instincts when something felt wrong, even when you couldn't immediately identify what it was. That's not something you can teach from a textbook." She explained the program, a series of workshops where professionals could learn to recognize the warning signs of various types of child endangerment, including custody disputes turning dangerous. The department wanted Robert to share his experience to help others understand how small changes in a child's behavior might signal bigger problems. "I don't know," Robert said hesitantly. "I've never been much for public speaking." "Just think about it," Detective Wilson said, handing him her card. "This isn't about turning you into a professional presenter. It's about sharing your real-world experience. The details you noticed with Lily, those could be the exact details that help someone else identify a child at risk." After Detective Wilson left, Robert sat in his bus, turning her card over in his hands. The idea of speaking in front of groups made his palms sweat, but the thought of helping other children like Lily was compelling. That evening, Robert shared the detective's proposal with his wife over dinner. "You should do it," she said, without hesitation. "You've always had a way with the kids on your route, they trust you. But standing up in front of a room full of people talking about myself?" Robert shook his head. "That's not me, Annie." His wife reached across the table and took his hand. "It's not about you, though, is it? It's about all those children out there who might need someone to notice them just like you noticed Lily." Robert knew she was right. It wasn't about his comfort. It was about potentially helping other children in situations like Lily's. The next day, after dropping off his last afternoon passenger, Robert drove to the address on Detective Wilson's card. The sheriff's department was housed in a modern building, on the edge of town. He found the detective in a small office cluttered with files and photographs. "I'd like to help with your program," he said simply. "If sharing my experience might help even one child, it's worth doing." Detective Wilson's face broke into a genuine smile. "That's wonderful, Robert. I believe it will help many children." Over the following weeks, Robert worked with the detective and a team from Family Services to develop a training module based on his experience with Lily. They created materials that highlighted the subtle warning signs, changes in behavior, appearance routines that might indicate a child was in a dangerous situation. Robert was surprised to discover that talking about his experience wasn't as difficult as he'd imagined. When he focused on helping others understand what to look for, His nervousness about public speaking faded into the background. The first workshop was held at Pine Valley Elementary, with teachers and staff from schools across the district attending. Robert felt a flutter of anxiety as he looked out at the room full of educators, but then he spotted a familiar face in the back row. Mrs. Chen sat there with Lily, both of them giving him encouraging smiles. Taking a deep breath, Robert began to speak. "I'm not here as an expert," he said honestly. "I'm just a bus driver who noticed when something didn't seem right with one of my passengers. What I've learned is that sometimes the most important thing we can do for children is simply pay attention." As he shared Lily's story, the gradual changes in her behavior, the concerning interactions with her father, the discovery of the letters, Robert could see recognition dawning on many faces in the audience. Teachers and aides nodded, perhaps thinking of children in their own classes who had shown similar signs. When Robert finished his presentation, the room erupted in applause. Several attendees approached him afterward, sharing their own stories of children they'd been concerned about, but hadn't known how to help. "I had a student last year who suddenly stopped participating in class," one teacher told him. "I knew something was wrong, but I didn't know what to do. Now I have a better idea of what to look for and how to report my concerns." As the crowd thinned, Lily and her mother made their way to the front of the room. Lily was beaming, her hair once again adorned with colorful butterfly clips, her purple backpack slung over one shoulder. "I told my mom I wanted to come see you be a teacher today," she said, her eyes bright. "You did a good job," Robert chuckled. "I'm still just a bus driver at heart, but I'm glad you came." Mrs. Chen's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "What you're doing here? It matters. It could have been so different for us if you hadn't noticed what was happening with Lily." After they left, Detective Wilson approached Robert. "That went even better than I'd hoped," she said. "We've already had requests for additional workshops from other districts." Robert nodded, a sense of purpose settling over him. He'd never imagined that his simple job driving children to and from school would lead to something like this. But then again, he'd always known that getting kids safely to their destination involved more than just operating a vehicle. Sometimes it meant being the one person who noticed when a child was silently asking for help. As he drove home that evening, Robert thought about the children who would board his bus tomorrow morning. They carried more than just backpacks and lunchboxes. They carried their hopes, their fears, their secrets, and while he couldn't solve all their problems, he could watch over them during those brief journeys, noticing the small changes that might signal bigger troubles. It wasn't a glamorous job, but as Robert had discovered, it was an important one. Sometimes the person behind the wheel was also the person who might just change a child's life. The seasons had changed in Pine Valley. Summer had faded into fall, and the maple trees that lined the school drop-off zone blazed with gold and crimson. For Robert, the start of a new school year always brought mixed emotions. Excitement about meeting new children and reconnecting with familiar faces, but also awareness that some kids might be carrying heavy burdens beneath their colorful backpacks and bright smiles. 6 months had passed since Lily's case. 6 months since a spilled backpack had revealed secret letters and set in motion events that changed not only Lily's life but Robert's as well. The training program he'd helped develop with Detective Wilson had expanded beyond their county, reaching school districts throughout the state. Robert still drove his regular routes, but once a month, he took a day off to speak at a workshop, sharing his experience and helping others learn to recognize warning signs. On this particular morning, Robert hummed along to the radio as he guided Bus 27 through its familiar path. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of fallen leaves and wood smoke. Children waited at their stops with jackets zipped tight, breath fogging in the chilly air. When he pulled up to Lily's stop, he smiled at the sight of her chatting animatedly with her mother. In the months since her return home, Lily had blossomed. She'd joined the school choir and made new friends. Most importantly, she laughed freely again, the shadows gone from her eyes. "Good morning, Mr. Robert," Lily called, bounding up the steps. Her purple backpack jangled with keychains and pins, and her hair was tied back with a new butterfly clip that sparkled in the morning light. "Morning, sunshine," Robert replied. Ready for the big presentation today? Lily nodded eagerly. Mom helped me practice all weekend. I'm not even scared anymore. Mrs. Chen waved from the sidewalk. Good luck today, both of you. Robert returned the wave before closing the doors and pulling away from the curb. In his rearview mirror, he watched Lily join her friends, her hands moving expressively as she talked. No trace remained of the frightened child who had once clutched a blue backpack to her chest like a shield. The special assembly was scheduled for that afternoon. When Robert returned to the school after his midday routes, the gymnasium was already filling with students from the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grades. Principal Johnson had arranged for Robert and Lily to speak as part of a new safety program, Keeping Kids Safe, designed to teach children about personal boundaries, trusted adults, and what to do if they felt unsafe. Robert found Lily, waiting near the gym entrance, shifting nervously from foot to foot despite her earlier confidence. Having second thoughts? He asked gently. Lily looked up at him, her eyes serious behind her glasses. What if I mess up? What if nobody listens? Robert knelt down to her level, ignoring the protest from his creaky knee. First, you won't mess up. Even if you forget a word or two, you'll be wonderful because you're speaking from the heart. And second, he tapped the butterfly clip in her hair. They'll listen because what you have to say matters. Lily took a deep breath and nodded. Okay, I'm ready. Inside the gymnasium, Principal Johnson welcomed the assembled students before introducing Robert. A ripple of surprise moved through the crowd as he stepped up to the microphone. Most of the children knew him only as the man who drove Bus 27. Good afternoon, everyone, Robert began, his voice steady despite the sea of young faces looking up at him. Most of you know me as Mr. Robert, the bus driver, but today, I'm here to talk about something very important: how to stay safe and what to do if you ever feel that you're not. He kept his message simple and direct, speaking about trusted adults, about the importance of telling someone if something didn't feel right, and about how sometimes the bravest thing a person could do was ask for help. Sometimes, he said, the grown-ups in your life might be going through hard times. They might say or do things that make you feel confused or scared. If that happens, it's not your fault, and you're not being disloyal if you tell another trusted adult about it. Jim was silent as he spoke, the children listening with unusual attentiveness. When Robert finished his part, he introduced Lily, his heart swelling with pride as she approached the microphone. She looked tiny standing there, but her voice rang out clear and strong. My name is Lily, and last year, something scary happened. To me, she began. My mom and dad got divorced, and it made my dad really sad and angry. He told me we had to go away, that my mom didn't want us anymore. He made me change schools and wouldn't let me call my mom or send her letters. Lily's hands gripped the edges of the lectern as she continued. I was really scared, but I didn't know what to do. I thought maybe it was my fault, or that I should just be quiet and not cause trouble. Her voice grew steadier as she spoke, gaining confidence with each word. Then one day on the bus, my backpack spilled open, and Mr. Roberts saw the letters I'd been trying to send to my mom. He noticed that something was wrong, and he told people who could help. Lily looked over at Robert with a smile. Because Mr. Robert paid attention and because he cared enough to speak up, I got to go home to my mom. I learned that sometimes the scariest thing can be asking for help, but it's also the most important thing. As Lily concluded her story, several teachers dabbed at their eyes. Principal Johnson returned to the microphone to finish the assembly, reminding the children of the trusted adults in the school they could talk to if they ever felt unsafe or confused. Afterward, in the emptying gymnasium, Detective Wilson approached Robert and Lily. She'd attended the assembly to observe and had sat quietly in the back. That was powerful, she told them. Particularly coming from you, Lily. Hearing from another child makes a tremendous difference. Lily beamed at the praise. Do you think it will help other kids who are scared like I was? I have no doubt, Detective Wilson assured her. In fact, I have some news that might interest both of you. She explained that the district attorney had reached a plea agreement with Mr. Chen. He had entered a program for parents involved in custody disputes, which included therapy and parenting classes. If he completed the program successfully and adhered to all court orders, some of the charges against him would be reduced. He's been attending his sessions regularly, Detective Wilson said. His therapist reports that he's beginning to understand the impact his actions had on Lily. Robert's jaw tightened. Will he have access to Lily again? That's ultimately up to the family court, Detective Wilson replied. But any visitation would be supervised for quite some time, and only if Lily is comfortable with it. Lily had been listening quietly. Now she looked up at the detective. Is my dad still mad at me for telling? Detective Wilson knelt down to Lily's level. No, sweetheart. Your dad is working hard to understand that what happened wasn't about you making a choice between your parents. It was about your safety and your right to have relationships with both of them. Lily nodded thoughtfully. My counselor says it's okay to still love my dad even though he made bad choices. Your counselor is very wise, Robert said, his heart aching for the complexities this young child had to navigate. As they left the gymnasium, Principal Johnson caught up with them. Robert, I've been meaning to talk to you. The school board was very impressed with today's assembly and the training programs you've been helping with. They'd like to make this a regular part of our curriculum and are considering creating a new position, a student safety coordinator, someone who would split their time between transportation duties and safety education. Would you be interested? Robert was taken aback by the offer. Me? But I don't have any special qualifications. Principal Johnson smiled. Your experience with Lily showed us all that sometimes the most valuable qualification is simply caring enough to pay attention. Think about it. The position would start next semester. That evening, Robert sat on his front porch watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. His wife brought out 2 mugs of tea and settled into the chair beside him. You've been quiet since you got home, she observed. Everything okay? Robert shared the school board's offer, voicing his doubts about taking on such a responsibility. I'm just a bus driver, Annie. I've been driving kids to school for almost 16 years now, it's what I know. Annie sipped her tea before responding. Maybe that's exactly why you're the right person for this job. You know these kids. You see them every day, not just in a classroom setting, but in those in-between moments when they're often most themselves. She reached over and squeezed his hand. What happened with Lily wasn't just luck, you know. It was because you paid attention in a way many people don't. Robert thought about the children who rode his bus, their stories, their struggles, their resilience. He thought about Lily, who had found the courage to speak to hundreds of her peers about her experience. And he thought about the other children out there who might be silently hoping that someone would notice them, would see beyond the surface to recognize when something wasn't right. Maybe I'll give it a try, he said finally. If it helps keep kids safe, it's worth stepping outside my comfort zone. The next morning, as Bus 27 made its rounds through Pine Valley, Robert greeted each child by name, noting their moods, their interactions, the small details that made up the tapestry of their daily lives. When Lily boarded at her stop, she handed him a small package wrapped in colorful paper. What's this? He asked, surprised. Open it later, she said with a secretive smile. It's a thank you present for yesterday. After completing his route and parking the bus, Robert carefully unwrapped the package. Inside was a handmade frame decorated with painted macaroni and glitter. The photo inside showed Lily and her mother at what appeared to be a recent school function, both smiling broadly at the camera. Across the bottom, in Lily's careful handwriting, were the words, "Sometimes heroes drive buses." Robert placed the frame carefully on his dashboard, where the morning sun caught the glitter and sent tiny rainbows dancing across the bus interior. As he prepared for his afternoon routes, he found himself looking forward to the new role he would be taking on next semester. He might not wear a cape or leap tall buildings, but in his own way, from behind the wheel of Bus 27, he had discovered something important. Sometimes the most heroic act wasn't facing down villains or saving the world. Sometimes it was simply paying attention to a child with sad eyes and a blue backpack, and having the courage to speak up when something didn't seem right, and maybe, just maybe, that was enough to change a life.